tables. If you don't have some, there are additional bits of scrap paper over by JVP's table, as well as some extra writing utensils. If you have a question you want to ask, simply raise and pick a card, and our friend here in yellow will swing by and collect it from you. So I want to start off. Go ahead and mic check that. Yeah. That's the mic that should be in here.
All right. That's for my camera. Yeah. We'll pass this around.
Exactly.
Well,
So, I was going to say, so you mentioned in the film that one of the projects that you wanted to do was to show the humanity and the wonderfulness and the people of Gaza and all of their life. And I just want to open up some space for both of you as folks who've been to Gaza, are from Gaza, and know the people there, to talk a little bit about what Gaza was like prior to October 7th and the events in the film.
thank you. Well, I guess first of all, before we get into it too deep, I just want to thank you all for sitting with this film on this Sunday afternoon. There's a lot of other activities I'm sure you could be doing, especially almost 3 years into this genocide. It's hard for me to express how much it means that you guys have shown up. I want to take a moment for you guys to acknowledge yourselves for building this community. And before we even begin, I think it's important, can we have a raise of hand if anyone, if this is their first Palestine event? I'm gonna
Raise them high, folks.
truly, I can't even fathom how much this means to me, because so often I do my events and I have a lot of Palestinian community members who've been involved for quite a while, so just even knowing that almost more than half of this audience has never been to an event like this topic means so much. And so it's helping me to frame how I'm happy to answer any of your guys' questions more in depth. And I'm so grateful to be joined here by Mohammed.
You don't want to get your mouth really close to those mics.
Good afternoon, everybody. Actually, I'm a little bit different because I grew up in Gaza.
You have to really get close.
Really close, like put it up to your chin.
Okay, how about now?
Closer, like right here.
Okay, how about now?
There we go.
All right. First, I actually grew up in Gaza. I was there until I finished high school. And then I got off the boat in good old Lawrence, Kansas. I was back in '82. And Munir, those who know me, they know I like to crack little jokes kind of here and there, but Munir, this movie took every energy out of me. I cannot, I'm trying hard to push myself to, just show some humor and things, but this movie took it. Because I just lived this stuff. When you're talking to someone that my first experience in life was looking at a dead body in 1967. That was my first experience in life. Looking at my brother-in-law who was shot in the front of his kid. For him being just a teacher. He was a middle school teacher. And we go before that in 1948, my uncle, my brother, his only brother, was shot in his home because he refused to leave. He refused. Most of the people in Gaza that you've seen here, most of them, 75% of them, actually are immigrants. They were pushed. Immigrants mean that they were pushed from their homes and towns. That was pre-1948. My family, we were just not too far to the south of Tel Aviv. That was my town originally. But they were pushed. And whoever wasn't pushed was shot and killed and end up in Gaza. So anybody that tells you that the Palestinians left willingly, tell them you're full of it. And so in 1956, I didn't witness him, but my uncle and his uncle were shot, were executed in their home. My grandmother watched her son and her brother being shot. And you know what my uncle was? He was a nurse. He had nothing to do with military. None of these folks had to do anything with military or freedom fighter or terrorism or this or all of that stuff. And then in 1967, shortly after that, 6 years old, I had an M16 put in my chest by a big, huge, fatigued, military kind of a man, just for me being 6 years old and walking in the street. This is the life that we've had to deal with. This is nothing new here. Palestine before, and I'm sorry if I'm taking too much of time. No. Palestine before 1948 was the peak of life in this. It was the Paris of the Middle East. It was, the Italians, with all due respect, they would cross the ocean. They would cross the Mediterranean to come and work as tailors in Palestine. The Greeks would cross the Mediterranean to come and work as waiters in Palestine. We've had people, Palestine was the place where people run to when they're oppressed. The Kurds ran, the Armenians. We had a lot of Armenians came and sought refuge in Palestine. And the Europeans in the Second World War came and sought refuge in Palestine. And the Jews came with signs, help us, we're oppressed. And they were there to help them. And my father had 2 Jewish families living on his land, living on his properties. He was helping them. But the Zionist mindset, see, I have a lot of Jewish friends, and the utmost respect to them. But we distinguish between the Judaism and Zionism. There's a big difference. The Zionists are the ones who are just came to be the worst of the worst that would ever migrated to Palestine throughout history. So what you're seeing here is not a war. It's just some sick mindset that wants. See, my friends. And again, I apologize for taking too much of your time, but this movie had meant for me. I was looking to Sylvia, the president of Brazil. He's 81 years old now, and he said something that just got me. See, we don't get old by just the passage of time and passage of days. We get old when we lose the mission, when we lose the compass, when we no longer know of what purpose we are serving. What are we doing in this earth? We're created to be peak and peace, to be a fountain of love and compassion, that we were created to be representative of God on earth. And if we don't do a good job, He's not happy with us. And as I'm going to shift and talk as an American. I'm going to forget being Gazan for a second, but I'm going to be talking here as an American. If we think that because we are far, we're distant, that this shouldn't be on our conscience, we are actually cheating ourselves. This is our fight. Because whether we like it or not, we are supporting it, we are paying for it. Our tax money, your tax money, my tax money is buying that F-16 that bumped his aunt has. I've lost more than 312 members of my family in Gaza. My brothers, sisters, my nephew was taken as a surgeon. He was a surgeon, taken out of Nasser Hospital, and he's still in jail today. My sister died in the Nasser Hospital. Every one of us have suffered. Every one of us has been, and this is all by my tax money in a way, by your tax money. This is on our conscience. We cannot just sleep and think, oh, that's it, we're done, it's far distant. No, it will come back to haunt us, haunt our conscience, and haunt us in life and hereafter. We cannot distance ourselves from the responsibility. And again, I'm sorry, I would not talk more, but I'm going to have to stop right here.
Thank you for, I would say, I made my documentaries for the generation that came before me here. My father, for example, out of his capacity to somehow be at the top of his class in Gaza, was able to get the opportunity to leave. And my mother, who was also born in Gaza, he married and brought to America as he was getting his PhD. And in all the work he had to do to make a stable family here, is unable to speak on our family's behalf the way I am. As someone who was born here, all my neighbors were white American Christian friends, and I grew up as the only actually Muslim in my entire school. And I grew up near the largest Air Force base in the country, 15 minutes away from it. All of my neighbors, their parents, and were either contractors or military members or veterans. And yet, they're not being given any context. I mean, even if they might have more context actually than we do, to a sense, the general public is not giving it the context of a film like this. And I feel as an American, first, that not only do we have the entire responsibility to fix what's happening there, we can't feel for a moment that we're not going to make that difference. The public policy can be impacted so quickly if we get more people to care. And we have to then take care of each other and continually, steadfastly meeting and supporting each other, especially those in the community potentially who are outspoken. By growing this family, I usually start my film by saying this is an invitation into my family. And my purpose is that you can then say you have loved ones in Gaza too. And if you have, like your grandma Sabah still living there, I am hopeful that you would then do what's in your capacity exponentially more than we have been in this movement to try to free them. I want to contextualize something that is just not even a headline when it should be the number one point on any mainstream media network. People who've never left 25 miles worth of land are being bombed by 2,000-pound bombs. So in my drive here today, I drove further than nearly all of my family members just to get from my hotel to this venue. So the privilege is unbearable. I speak to my cousins who are my age who have never left that little tiny piece of land. And I feel so indebted to them, and I feel so deeply that all they deserve is to be honored truly. And so I'm going to put it out and manifest it by saying it here again. Does anyone have anyone that has a private jet? Because I truly believe if anyone deserves a private jet, it's my family to tour the world and live like the royalty that they deserve. They have so many lessons and stories that humanity will be doing itself a disservice if we do not comprehend their strength and apply it to the spoiledness that we are here, so that we can truly make the most of this life that we're given, this short life. I want to open up the floor though, and maybe potentially to just help guide this conversation, some questions that we might have later.
Yeah, I've got a few more loaded for if more folks want to add more to our plan. So it's been over almost 2 years since you released the film, and over a year since the alleged ceasefire between Israel and Hamas went into effect. What I was really curious about after I finished the film is how have things changed or not changed for your families on the ground in Gaza?
my film only encompasses the first 90 days of genocide. I created it using all the capacity I had, as fast as I could, with the single purpose that, and knowledge and belief that it was going to end the genocide once I released it for free on YouTube, because I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to gatekeep the story of these thousands of children that we need to be saving. So I released it, and since then, I had all of Sony Production Entertainment, all of Disney and Paramount and Warner Brothers, all producing documentaries about my specific stories of my family and even encompass the last year or two. I say that in the sense that, like, imagine having your cousin, your beloved cousin, calling you in your grandma's home, and all you hear yelling is, it's the Afmar, which he's saying, I can't say the word, whatever, but he's trying to get me to call the Red Cross, because he's trying to, because drones are now flying around and he's watching his neighbors being mowed down next to him. And he's with his wife and he's in the panic I've ever seen. And I'm with my mom and she's crying on the phone, listening, like, we can hear the drones. And it's like trying to pretend it's not a Black Mirror. My entire last 3 years have been the biggest Black Mirror episode possible. And that's why, again, I think the reality, though, of the last 3 years, I mean, things have gotten exponentially worse and it's not any better. And I keep getting still phone calls that the airstrikes are still here. A year of ceasefire. Yeah, it seems like they can't go a day without an actual ceasefire. And yet, my family still somehow remains strong. And that's what is still mind-blowing to me.
Dr. Oda, do you want to add anything to that? Or?
Just simply for my family, nothing has much really changed. They're still, for the last 3 years, they're still living in tents. They actually, most of us that go camping, we go camping for a day, and then by the time the morning the sun starts showing up, we want to run home because we got sick and tired of camping. They've been camping for 3 years now. Try to imagine the conditions of the tents. I get a lot of phone calls from my family. They're asking me can you help us? We need another tent. Our tent is torn and the rain is coming on us. Or can you help, with some food here or some food there? It's overwhelming, exhausting, trying to deliver to them. My nephews, my brother, his son got married in a tent. His daughter got married in a tent. The whole life now rotates around the tent. That's
a bucket of water. That's their kitchen, it's a bucket of water.
Oh yeah. Their bathroom is a hole dug in the ground with the whole. I used to think I'm eloquent, but by God, by Allah, when it comes to trying to describe these things, I just cannot find or think of words. And my folks, I just want to say something. Like I said, we don't have an option of not acting. The good thing that came out of this, one of the good things is that the anti-Semitic scare is no longer valid.
Amen.
It doesn't scare us anymore. Literally, on utmost respect, they overused it to the point that it became more like a used condom. It has lost its efficacy, and nobody want to touch it anymore. So this is the extent. We have no choice but to have to act to get it off our chest and off our conscience.
Thank you. And I do have a question from the audience that I think both of you are probably tired of hearing. Sorry in advance, but as we know, we have folks who have not been to any events like this before, and so I want to give that context. The question that's being asked is, do the Palestinian people on the whole support those who advocate violent resistance? And before I give this to both of you, I do want to say to the audience, this is a question that gets asked at Palestinian people quite a lot, and has been asked of people who have supported Palestinians very aggressively in a number of use cases. We're trying to go with a there's no stupid questions here situation. But I do want to just take a moment to note that Palestinians are not a monolith, and even if they were, the right to resist oppression and occupation is protected by international law. What shape that takes may or may has a lot of different routes, but I just want to be clear that whether or not Palestinian people support violent resistance is also not a reason to not act and to not try to stop a genocide. Sorry to take that one from both of you, but I didn't feel it was right to just hit you with that question without also adding to it.
It actually means a lot coming from voices that aren't Palestinian when they speak about the options that my family and the Palestinians have. Okay. I think we have continually avoided the most fundamental aspect about the violence that's being conducted on them, and the machinery of death that is giving them zero, and it had given them zero option but to make people pay attention for a moment. It's difficult for me to even conceptualize that the concern would be for people who have sticks and stones over those that have a weapon that is flying at light speed in the sky, designed to typically fight against other fighter jets, being so mishandled and misused on with such neglect, and that not being the most critical questions. Why is that being enabled and so freely? In order just the first 3 months, as you notice in the film, to destroy as much of us as they did, we're ignoring something. The hoarding of weaponry that they had acquired knowingly to be used on a civilian population in the heart of the world, in the Holy Land. The conversation of peace is something like, if I had the capacity to say the words I needed in order to navigate my family and our families into peace, I would say those words from the day that this genocide began. And so I have to start by speaking the truth, which is, if your grandma still had the key to her home in Jaffa, which is now Tel Aviv, and she was made into a refugee as a little girl and fled to Gaza to experience a life in which I can almost guarantee that nearly everyone in this room would crumble from just 2 days, 1 day there, we would be singing a wholly different tune. And so I think that perspective is critical to acknowledge who's underneath the numbers that we're scrolling at the end, the faces of these people that we have neglected and forgotten, and the stories that they carry. I think that's my only answer. It's do you know who is under the rubble that you're saying is justified? They don't know who they are.
And that kind of question, I have to stand up. part of it, I need to prove that I can stand up and chew gum at the same time. So, my friends, we get asked that question very, very often. But to answer the question, let me qualify with a little bit. As I told you, I come from a village, or my parents came from a village not too far to the south of Tel Aviv. My grandfather owns land there, which is his name in the British archives and his name in the Turkish archives, which my father owns it. Now, both of them, Allah yarhamhum, God bless their soul, they passed away. So naturally, I'm standing in front of you right now. I own land not too far to the south of Tel Aviv. You know what would happen to me if I even go to it? You let your imagination. You know who it was given to? Some guy that came from Bulgaria or Romania. Just because he happened to be what? Jewish. Now, tell me, how could that be fair? The Palestinians' resistance, every people that has fall under oppression has the right to resist. The Palestinians, by the way, were extremely peaceful. In 1993, when the Oslo Accord were signed, I was euphoric. I went home, I was dancing. My wife just said, look, what's happened to this guy? But the people were promised something. They waited and waited and waited. See, all that's Hamas, this, Hamas, that. Hamas is the product of the failure of the community, the world community, in delivering to the Palestinians what the Palestinians were promised. They were promised a state in 5 years, but it put it in 1998. Well, there's nothing there. And eventually, when you lose hope, there's a fringe of the community that's just gonna think of other ways. The Palestinians, but you know the Palestinians, forgive me, and again, I'm so sorry, I know I get to the Palestinians have the highest education level in the world. I don't know if many of you know that. The Palestinians have the highest level of PhD holders per capita in the world. The Palestinians do not. See, when my mother had me when I was a kid, she didn't say, oh, he's just so beautiful, suicide bumper eventually, I love him, he's gonna. No, she wanted me to be a doctor, she wanted me to be an engineer, she wanted to be, 11 kids in my family were all have degrees. Not because they wanted us to go and just blow ourselves up. No, we love peace, we love the world. We want to produce to the world, we want to create patents and create technologies and advance the world. That's our mindset, has always been. We found ourselves in a situation that some of us went to just, you didn't blame them for trying hard, trying to, yes, a life, a loss of a life, regardless whether it's a Palestinian, whether it's Jewish, whether it's Muslim, whether it's Christian, it's a sad story. The world needs to take their responsibility and act and resolve that issue. And the only one that's capable of doing it is us. When we told them stop bombing Lebanon, they stopped. Stop bombing Iran, they stopped. Stop bombing Gaza, they stopped. Yeah, they stopped on the surface, but every day there is some, instead of killing 2, 3, 500 people a day, now they're killing 10, 20.
Thank you. And I also just want to add on some of that topic. I was recently reading a history that talked a bunch about like the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. This is just me connecting to what y'all have been saying to some of my own experiences and the experiences of many Jews. And I was struck reading that just how similar the tactics of concentrating a population and the arbitrary punishments that my own people went through mirror what has been done in Gaza, and it puts me in a state where I just think about the no-win choices that people are being put in front of, and how hard everything I've seen from the Palestinian community work towards living with dignity and ending the occupation and begging the rest of us to help as well. And it's the same across both times, and I just am constantly struck by that. Sorry, that This is my own editorializing, because I can't resist. So, what, in your opinions, is the best way as individuals that people can better support the Palestinian cause? It's a big question, but I have a sinking suspicion you all have answers.
That's a significant topic. It's difficult for me to answer because I've tried doing as much as I can so far, and I still don't feel like it's enough. But as I mentioned, I'm producing this documentary and starting to share it and going on this nationwide tour, trying to bring awareness in a way that can activate, hopefully, communities and my neighbors. I do still think we have such a massive puzzle piece missing from the discussion. It's a film like this one, because it's, at least I hope not, to make it a spectacle. I think a lot of discussions around Palestine and the topic at hand turns into like a spectacle, or like almost not entertainment, but becomes out of touch or out of reach because it's historically analytical, or it's basing it off of in-depth legal frameworks, or in other ways, it's less humanizing to the actual people facing the brunt of the nightmare. And so I think by inviting friends over and opening the door to especially have, the thing is, it's difficult to say what kind of impact does awareness really bring unless it's continually pushing pressure and making advancements in a political sense as well. And so gathering support, and I'm sure that we can't see it, for there's some people running, but staying engaged with all of the works here on a way that's consistent and that of taking ownership and leadership within your capacity. Like, you can balance your job as well, you can balance different aspects of organizing, because at the end of the day, it's going to be community that decides whether or not we can handle any bit of turbulence in this country. We are a very fragile people, unfortunately, here in America. And when you reflect on what Gaza shows and teaches, and it's their community that, while the airstrikes are flying over them, they're terrifying sounding. Neighbors and strangers are digging other strangers out of the rubble. And we have to ask ourselves, would we do the same thing? Right? And they're doing that without the resources of, like, even cleanliness, washing their hands, sweating hunger. In a hunger, they're digging people out of rubble to try to save lives. And the miracle stories are endless. I think if we even encapsulate, just since my film had been completed, the movie From Ground Zero by Watermelon Pictures is an incredible, I think any film from Gaza inside filmed there, or like, but this one in particular is 22 short films from filmmakers inside Gaza basically it was produced, I think, 2 months after mine. So I was trying to do what they ended up doing with that documentary, but like from being outside of Gaza. And it's, if you turn on the TV, we're not seeing any addressing any topic of substance for us, truly. How does a toilet paper commercial get more airtime than 33 members of my family members being killed by one airstrike that was probably put the screws on all throughout the United States? That there's a way we can begin to continue influencing media. You have to do what is required to do so.
Certainly, everybody has a role to play. No one is excused from trying to do something. Munir found his niche in doing what he's doing. Wonderful, great. Every one of us can play in different roles. Some of us, Gaza very much kind of, Like, if you take, and we are here, because PAMA, Palestinian American Medical Association, is part of this. PAMA stepped in immediately to rebuild the hospitals that were destroyed. The ER rooms, which I have no idea how could that be a military target. The Nasser Hospital, Shifa Hospital, they told us all about the tunnels underneath them, and we haven't seen any tunnels underneath them. But I guess we're not that naive. We all know that the purpose of it was just to get him out, push him out. But eventually it didn't, it failed, and thank God it failed. So they're there now. But there are hospitals that needs to be rebuilt. Some of us might be able to volunteer on the medical side of it. Some of us may not be that fortunate. They can donate to PAMA, to support. They invested a lot of money rebuilding the birth center. And so those hospitals were destroyed. Again, I don't know how could that be military, but those are, so every one of us can help. Those who can write, but the bottom line is we have to tell our representatives, no more support, no more 2,000 pound bombs to be dropped on tents, to be dropped on, I have a relative that she was killed along with the baby in her womb. So that's that.
I want to add on to that specifically, since Dr. Rhoda mentioned Palestinian American Medical Association. In front of you are cards with a QR code and information about PAMA. I strongly encourage you to take out your phone, scan that QR code, and give what you can. PAMA does so much to get medical supplies, training, additional personnel into Gaza. PAMA's doctors have been under threat by the IDF in the last 3 years just for trying to help people, to do what they should be protected in doing under international law. Were those laws not being ignored with such ridiculous statements as there's tunnels under a hospital and it's a command center? Okay, so the next question, I'm gonna be editing how this was asked, but what would y'all say, what would you say, this is a heady question, but what would you say is the relationship between the last several years of the Gaza genocide and civil rights in the US, the way that the Gaza genocide has negatively impacted, or do you believe that there is a connection between what happens in Gaza and what happens here domestically?
I think that's a great question, and it's definitely intertwined deeply. So my sister, who is the voice of the film, Nabita, she's actually a leading national civil rights attorney. She works for Ben Crump Law on some of the biggest civil rights cases in the country. She's actually the attorney for the family of Wadea El-Fayoumi, which is a 6-year-old Palestinian kid who was stabbed to death in Chicago, along with several other major cases that are going on currently. So her whole position as a civil rights attorney is interconnecting our various struggles. In many ways, there's people I know and I've met throughout my journey touring the film personally who have been taken in by ICE or by authorities. There's the sheer repression that we're facing, and how the universities, the students, are leading the awareness and the charge. Institutionally speaking, it's always going to always be delayed. But I think the difference with now in the civil rights movement, especially, is like the amount of evidence that we have now. Like we have receipts of the sheer the brazenness is the best word I could use for people that are not only actively supporting it, but are like being exposed for online about doing so. And I think it's vital that we maintain that pressure, and then that we don't let things slide. I think what's been happening, because this is where entertainment and media is so valuable, like the way entertainment is built to distract and like detach, it means that we lose sight of like the dynamics that we play, and we begin to get into the mindset of like the news is never nonstop, right? The way the status quo stuff is nonstop, and we don't have any impact on it. That's what they tried to convince us of. But I think we just have to continue building community truly. I think that answers it.
Thank you. This is actually one of the things that gives me the utmost hope. We are changing, and I'm talking, we as Americans, as a community, we are changing. We're paying way more attention to it than we've ever had. They tried to silence us. They tried back there by killing all of those journalists because they don't want to see the picture. Not because they don't care, they're worried about the picture coming to me. They know I know the truth. They don't want the picture to come to you, because they know that you are of such a conscience that when you see the reality, you're not going to take it. You're not just going to stay silent. And so the college students that they chased from street to street, they didn't want them to do that because they didn't want the picture. They didn't want us to have the courage to get up and say, no, this is wrong. Yes, they scared us for so many years with that anti-Semitic stuff, or I blame the Jews stuff. That was actually, I was witnessing a debate, and both of them are Jewish, and the guy said, blame the Jews. He said to the Jewish guy. So just like those, using those lines no longer scaring us as a community anymore. And that is actually what given me hope. And I think the civil movement is going to get a lot of energy coming from what's happening there. Just like we witnessed, those are the, my generation witnessed in South Africa movement and what have you. I think we are preparing ourselves. We are soon going to see that, whether they like it or not. The people going to act, and it's going to happen.
So, the next question, and I think if y'all don't mind, I'm going to steal some of this one because it speaks to a more strategic thing in organizing spaces, which is why don't they call for a ceasefire and not decolonization? Israel and Zionists have proven they can't be trusted. I think I can take this one a little bit. So the call for a ceasefire was rooted in the moment that it was being called for. If someone is currently stabbing you, you're not going to ask them to respect you as a person. You're going to ask them to stop stabbing you. That was a short-term ask. It's one that has come, and it's one that has also not brought the full desired outcome because one side consistently ignores it. We've basically returned to a state where they were already, that we had before, which was also one in which international law was frequently ignored. If y'all have anything you want to add to that one, feel free, but I figured it was good to just address.
I think we have a lot of untangling to do of the situations that we have permitted and neglected addressing properly in the entire scenario of what has unfolded, not over just the last 3 years, but the context prior in many ways. So a ceasefire, right? The ceasefire is, in my opinion, it doesn't exist, okay? It's just a lesser suffering, or like a slightly, but you can't have a lesser suffering if you're already on your almost deathbed, like most of my family. They're already barely scratching by. Beyond that, the conditions in which we need to improve their freedom is essential to our freedom here in this country, the freedom of the global South as a whole, and I think the freedom of our future generations. Because permitting this blatant disregard is, whether we like it or not, incidences that can become irreversible. So it can be a scary thought or a scary moment as like individuals when we get to avoid this. But we're not individuals, we are we're social beings. And also we have essential resources within building and bringing more people to get involved. Again, I think we would ask her to call on things. I would love to have my grandma come back. But if we can't even recognize the destruction of my grandmother's home, or my grandfather's home, that my dad came to America, worked his ass off as a PhD professor, educating students across America, sent over money to go and build my grandfather's home that housed over 45 of my family members, with all of his brothers and my grandpa, and it was the most blessed building I've ever set foot in, that I just uncovered footage of from my dad's camcorder. A place that just breathed so much life and love, and the value of what President represented in the sense of family connection. Like almost every building there is a whole last name. Generations that so we take care of our grandparents or the elderly. The brothers usually get the second or third floor depending on their age, and they work their way up. And they, when I went to visit for an example, right, even he did it today to me. I go, Munir Shah. He goes, Hanunis or the Munir, but we know our last names, like if we so that you say last name, most likely that's how we the person in Gaza is going to know what your family lineage is. Like, imagine doing that here in Canada. Here you go. I don't think you're going to find very many people knowing like your lineage in that sense. Again, I think bring it back to the ceasefire. We have a lot more addressing to do. In one, who's making all the money off of these bombs? Why is there no checks and balances for our weapons? Why, like, what are the next steps that we have to structurally to not only create the permanent conditions for ceasefire, but also the next steps for freedom and dignity for the people and reparations. Because if we can't witness some level of reparations for my family and the families there, we're still going to have to be fighting for the civil rights and for the civil rights of the people here who have been suffering under the ghettos and the lack of upward mobility in many communities here and across the world.
The line that says, hit him, and if they don't submit, hit him harder, and they'll submit, hit him harder, and so on and so on. I think that is coming to a point where the authorities, and I'm talking here probably in Israel. See, the Israeli community society, I believe, is also waking up. Israel is currently being kidnapped by lunatics like Netanyahu and Ben Gavir and those guys. And I believe the society there is waking up to the reality that this is not going to work. The Palestinians will not go anywhere. We are not going to disappear. We're not going to melt. And if they think the old will die and the young will forget, my kids have not been in Gaza for a long time. I mean, they didn't grow up in Gaza, but they love Gaza and they love Palestine probably more than I do. And their kids will love it more than they are, and that's how we're not. So they're coming to the realization, the conclusion that we're gonna have to solve this issue. The issue, solving it by kicking, dispersing, hoping that they're gonna wake up someday and Gaza will be swallowed by the sea, is not gonna happen. We are not going anywhere. So I believe there is hope. what happened, what happens in Gaza is going to be different from what happened in Gaza. I don't like to personalize things, but I'd like to share with you this. I built my home. It's actually right in the middle of Gaza Strip. My kids were actually there 2 months before this last war started with their mom, and and I was working here, sending them money to spend and live lavishly. But my home was sitting actually in one of the largest pieces, had more than like 650 olive trees, had palm trees, had, fruits. You could just drive in there and you would be able to pick up oranges and figs off the trees. And then the war started. And then it was an empty place. Happened that they decided to use it as a command center, as in the Israeli army. And you see the Hebrew writings on the walls and assignments and all that stuff. And when they finished, they pulled out. Not a single tree is left. Not a stone is standing on top of a stone. And I'll be happy to show you pictures, so you wouldn't think I'm full of it. And I'll be happy to show you pictures. This is the kind of mindset, the kind of life that the Gazans have had. Despite their love for life, they've had to deal with some wild animals. And I don't know why I went in here, but I just had to mention it.
Well, thank you. So I have one last question before we get into the how we can support FAMA and your future work. And I just like this question enough that I wanted to ask it, even though we're a little over time. When was the last time you had contact with your family members inside of Gaza? And have they seen the response to the film so far, and how do they feel about it?
That's a good question. I would actually usually like to follow my screen with something special, and I actually already did. While the credits were rolling, I had my cousin on FaceTime. So he saw you guys, and he was having the biggest smile on his face. And with that said, I actually think if we have a few seconds, he's ready for a phone call, I believe. Let me see if I can make this work. I'll let you speak for a moment, though. You want to talk about how your family's doing?
Well, my family, I talked to them last time was yesterday. And yesterday I received the call about them asking, see, I bought a piece of land right where in the Mawasi area where you have the highest concentration of people there. And I opened it for people to put their tents and live there. And I get sometimes some funny calls. Well, someone wanted to make his tent larger, and my cousin on the other side is objecting to that. So can you intervene and help me make my tent larger? So this is kind of sometimes. This is kind of sometimes the stuff I have to deal with.
I can't help but chuckle a little bit about that.
There's a saying in Arabic that says, "Sharr al-baliyah," the worst of calamities is the one that makes you smile. It's so sad that makes you smile. And sometimes, I find myself crying and laughing at the same time.
That's my cousin Moody, everybody. Say hi.
Hello.
He is live in Gaza right now.
مساء الخير على الجميع.
Maybe think.
أشكر مشكورة بالعبد منير. الآن الفرصة الكريمة وجودنا فيها إن شاء الله.
You want to translate for him? Can you hear?
He was talking about a wonderful opportunity to be along with you folks.
Is it 1 a.m. over there? Yep. Okay, so like it again.
عندنا الساعة ساعة.
It's about 1 o'clock at night, I guess, right now.
Yeah, 1 a.m.
1 a.m.
عن جد أنا كثير سعيد جدا فيكم.
Seriously, he's very, very honored and proud to be with you.
أشكركم جدا لوجودكم لحضوركم جميعا.
Thank thank you very much, all of you, for your efforts and your presence.
انت انا انت منير too صح ولا انا منير too؟ Moody too.
أنا مودي تو في غزة.
He's like my twin basically. So I'm saying we don't know whether to call him like I like to say I'm Moody too. Him too. He likes to say he's Munir too.
عن جد أنا لما بسمع صوتكم بتضحك وإحنا بنبصر، لأنه صارت عندنا ضحكة في غزة ثمنها كبير.
When he hears you laughing, he's happy to hear you laughing, although that laughter and smiling is very difficult to come by with.
عندنا في غزة لسه بنعيش في حرب وقفت إعلاميا بس واقعيا لسه الحرب موجودة.
In Gaza, the war is still going on, and maybe in the media it stopped, but in reality it's still going.
بس كيف انت حكيت؟
احنا الحمد لله احنا صامدين في غزة.
Thank God we're standing fast in Gaza and with patience.
احنا رسالة صمود لكل العالم.
We are a message of steadfast and being and patience to the rest of the world.
We're the beacon of patience for the rest of the world. انت متجوز صح؟ كيف مرتك؟ You got married recently.
Thank you very much. الحمد لله. أنا اتجوزت في الحرب.
You got married in the war. When did you book? This and that. I said, where's the baby at? كيف حال ستي؟
الحمد لله كويسة، كثير زعلانة على غزة وعلى بيتها اللي اتدمر وراح في الحرب.
His grandma is very sad for the house she lost in the war, and she's sad for Gaza.
The house I was dancing in. Saw me dancing? My cousin? It's a sea of rubble. I mean, knowing them don't repair it somehow, but it's 3 feet of rubble where I was dancing. We lost our family bakery that had opened up for them about 6 months before this genocide. To finally get his dad working again and his family, it was going to be what their legacy. My grandfather on my mom's side, so this is from my mom's side of the family, their last name is Hillo, and they're known as bakers. My grandpa actually, God rest his soul, had a My grandpa on my mom's side had he was a well-known baker. He actually had a famous recipe, biscotta, like tea biscotta, and so my uncle was the only one in Gaza to know the recipe and brought it back right before the genocide began. And on my TikTok, there's some videos from it, like the opening and what it looks like now and how it's just destroyed. It's just devastating. Like they were just about to begin their lives. The bakery was going to help them to get married. Thankfully, they still managed to do that, but they don't know how they're going to provide for their family at all and what's to expect tomorrow. And so I think it's up to us to continue to impact them and to be there for them. So I want to ask the audience here quick, is there any ways you guys can think of that can make a difference? Yeah.
Try to get your representatives to sign HR 3565, the Block Bombs Act.
I was just about to bring that up. The Block the Bombs Act is still out there. It is still gathering co-sponsors. You can go to blockthebombs.org. There are also there have been other bills recently about blocking weapons to Israel. But the Block the Bombs Act is a very material one, and I can say that none of the representatives around us are co-sponsors yet. So, Hester Cleaver, Hester Charisse, Hester, I forget who the conservatives are in the area. Yes, this is it, and this is specifically in the House. Yep, bother all of the House of Representatives people about that one. And then I do have two other, well, go ahead.
I just want to say I've been to different places similar for the good of the world and the people, okay? And they say, contact your representatives. Well, I may not have time to look up even my representative. I don't have a computer and I don't have Wi-Fi. I do have a dumb phone, but I'm not real spiffy on that kind of thing. They have papers over there. They have letters to the 3 representatives. You can go, sign them, put your name and your address on them. They will mail them to your representatives. You don't even have to know what your representative
Okay. And I want to add, like, how do we expand that impact, though? Now, do we have people here who are willing to take on the initiatives, at least within your neighborhood, beginning there, having these conversations? So I want to hear what, yeah.
I'm not actually from here, but I know where Kansas City is involved in the work project that's been sanctions. Some good things here.
Right, and there's a whole BDS list of boycott, divestment, and sanctions for the companies and corporations that are both, one, silent about the genocide and also contributing in many ways.
One of the things that you could demand from those representatives, support the flotilla and demand a safe passage to open a humanitarian
Amazing,
border
yes.
should all be able to be done.
Precisely, the flotilla, the global Samud flotilla, I actually have friends that are on it. I could call Chris Smalls right now, who came into the last one. Tariq Raouf, which is one of the Apple protester voices, helping coordinate Apple to acknowledge genocide. I would say that's one of the most incredible movements right now. The global, like, why can't we bring diapers and baby formula and shelter and supplies, right, through global waterways to reach us? We need to continue putting the pressure on it. Let's do it, Kansas City. Look, there's a river here. Let's take it for But yeah.
So, I'm going to jump back in on one more thing that you can do. Dr. Ode, could you say a little bit more about the work of PAMA and
We're
why
gonna go.
people should
You can either go
get out their
or
wallets and
one
give
of
some
these
money
other
right
people.
now?
Okay.
Certainly.
I don't know
And
who
I
the
said,
people-
Hannah,
I
I
don't
can't
know
really
the
skip
other-
in there.
Well, the lady
Hannah
that
sent
talked back there in the blue
teams
jacket.
of surgeons, teams of doctors that were needed. You know, with those kind of injuries, those kind of, so they required some expertise. Your average and they actually, PAMA sent several teams. Every month they were willing, there were a lot of volunteers, amazing. It's impressive how many doctors signed up to volunteer. And not all of them were of Palestinian or Muslim origins. A lot of, folks that were just, it was just heartwarming, honestly. So they were still, and of course, a lot of them were prevented, were not allowed, for whatever reason, God knows. But the point is, they went there, they saved lives, they worked hard, they saw firsthand the destruction of the hospitals. They were very quick to rebuild some of those the urgent care, the emergency centers, all this they rebuilt it. They even went to the point that when they saw people starving and hungry, they went to the point of dedicating some of the money to buy food, buy drinking water. In Gaza, I myself drilled 3 wells. The unfortunate thing is that in Gaza, you drill, you get water, it's salty. So there has to be some treatment to clean that water to make it to the point that somebody can drink. They actually helped with that. They're very, I have the utmost respect, and I highly encourage everyone to donate to Bama whatever they can, because they are really the most honorable, very, worthy, very trustworthy. I have the utmost respect for them.
Thank you. I want to also emphasize, every time I've been in an event with PAMA spokespeople, one of the things that they emphasize is the incredible ingenuity of the Palestinian medical community in Gaza. The healthcare workers there make do with so little supplies, so many resources and medicines are blocked by the Israeli government, and the incredible work that doctors there on the ground do is under some of the harshest conditions you can imagine for the field.
And that also has another side to it. The patience that the Palestinians patients have to show when they are treated with that anesthesia and stuff like that. It's sad to see the pain and suffering they have to go through when they are treated, and some operations have to occur without adequate anesthesia. I mean, that's a sad chapter of that too.
And Munir, if you would tell us, how can people support your work after today's event and into the future?
Well, I definitely want to emphasize, please support PAMA and any medical professionals that are willing or able to go to Gaza. I've heard stories from not only Doctors Against Genocide, who I'm partnering with soon, but several other healthcare workers who've been there, and the struggles that they go through is unbelievable. I know many medical professionals are bringing their own gear, their own equipment, and as well, they're only allowed, like last time I heard someone who went was only allowed 2.5 kilos of food. She wasn't allowed to bring, she wanted to bring 15 kilos to help the doctor. They didn't even let her bring more than 2.5 kilos of food. What's that going to do? Right? And so the conditions that they are operating in and choosing to leave the life of privilege here and go there is incredible. I would like to honestly, sorry, Moody, can't fucking Moody, sorry. احنا بحكي بالانجليزي كل شيء. انت مش زعلان مني يا صح؟ من ناحية بدك تضلك معنا؟
أنا معك وأنا كثير مبسوط فيكم وبوجودكم معنا.
He's super happy that you guys are with us here. Okay, استنى شوية. أنا بدي أخليهم أحكي معك بعد استنى شوية. There's a few ways that I can ask for you guys to help me. Does anyone here have a connection to a venue that maybe would be willing to support this and are capable? And you guys can email me and host your own screening, whether it be virtual or helping me sustain my tour. So I don't know how, but comedians seem to be able to get like 30 cities booked in advance. I typically only can manage to get one, and it takes a lot of effort and energy. So thankfully, Tom handled almost everything there. So Tom, everyone go say thank you to Tom as well. He came to my showing at Stray Cat Theater, also go support Stray Cat Theater, for about 6 months ago, and managed to coordinate this and bring me back. Again, that's one of the main ways you can, if you don't have monetary support, to help my work continue. And sharing it with your friends and family. Like, so, right, your homework for the day is to find 3 people who haven't engaged with this topic. And please sit them down and say, the director's my friend now, and he said, hey, I'm watching it. That means a lot. And then, truly though, I'm running on fumes, and I have been for the last 2 years. I've had 0 budget to work with. The film was created in a month on my own. And I lost my job 3 days after I lost 27 family members, and so this has been my full-time pursuit, not job, because it's not sustainable. I have a full-time team that I hired recently 4 months ago because I just I can't expand if I fall on my shoulders. I've been touring for the greater part of a year and a half on my own. And I'm trying to make this sustainable. So if I can get maybe 3 to 5 people to donate like monthly, that would mean a lot. anywhere from 100 to 50 would be huge. Or if you know any key donors where I can just not be asking while I'm doing these events for donations, that would be essential. I hate having to do this because it's just been a mind fuck, like, generally got. If I had a small budget monthly, like I was making when I was a real estate videographer, I'd be fine, but I can't even sustain that. So if you know of anyone who can step in just at least for a few months while I get my productions more in order, it would mean a lot. So, do we have anyone? Or am I gonna put you guys in? I don't have an, hey, Mohammed, come be. I don't have an ammo here to like do the fundraising for me. So that's what they do at the mosque. We used to get like an uncle who's like, I know I saw the Range Rovers outside. I don't think anyone can like that. Like, you guys aren't leaving until you don't. I will say also, I know it seems like this is just going to fund my work. Most of the reason I'm strapped so much as well is because we're consistently every week, every other day, I'm sending money to Gaza. I've sent over $450,000 already, and we built wells, communities, we feed, we do surgeries, we do all kinds of initiatives, and this is the guy who runs all of it. Okay. Are we running out of time now?
I think we are a bit over
Let's
time.
go. I'll let you guys go now.
Take lid from the tables here. Stay engaged. Call your reps. Tell them to block the bombs. Thank you all for coming today. Scan those QR codes.
And there's also a form here that you can fill out for support, to give your thoughts and feedback on the bottom. You can